Шановні колеги, ми
Good afternoon, esteemed colleagues. We are starting the working day and we are going to talk about hybrid wars. Mr. Yevhen Magda is going to present his book, who is the author of the book on hybrid war. He is a politologist and consultant, as well as a lecturer at the Kyiv Polytechnic University. Hello, esteemed colleagues. We are really going to talk about hybrid war. You've heard a lot about it, and you may imagine what the hybrid war is. I tried to give a swift answer on the question. We had an agreement with the Publishment House because the publication took place just 5 months ago, and you understand this is not a big period of time. I believe this is a decent answer to actions of the Russian Federation as regards of Ukraine, not only because such a book is here in Ukraine. The Russian Federation lacks such a book, despite my friends passed several of my books there. But no reaction. So Kharkiv Publishing House published the book. It looks like this. It was published both in Ukrainian and in Russian. And the number of books in Ukrainian is twice bigger. So, what is the hybrid war? As I see this, hybrid war is a willing of one country to use its power to have power on the other country using political levers. This is a war within which the military actions are not the main actions taking place. We speak first of all about political actions here. In my book, I tried to depict the main fronts of the hybrid war and dwell upon on the peculiarities which must be paid attention to. We have this briefing, and it is briefing, that is why I may not tell you everything about the book, but several main things I'm going to cover. Well, is it right to believe that Viktor Yanukovych and Volodymyr Putin is to blame in everything? I believe that Ukrainian elite in general is to blame. Those who were ruling the country for 20 years and did not take the risk of some energetic, active reforms in order to show changes, to achieve changes. In the beginning of the 90s, Ukraine had the biggest potential among the Eastern Europe countries, and as of now, it has the lowest salary if to compare to other European countries. And it shows us that as of now, we are within the situation which may be called the truth moment. Ukraine has to change itself, and only then it will have a chance to win. Or otherwise, it must get ready to the situation when we lose our sovereignty, our territory. We will lose the possibilities to implement our huge plans and hopes. This very struggle between Ukraine and the Russian Federation deserves attention due to one more reason. This is a confrontation of one of the biggest countries in the world with the biggest countries in Europe. That is why the civilized world has to pay attention to the situation. Up to July 2014, Russia was forcing its own opinion about civil war in Ukraine, about people being disappointed in Maidan, but then was a catastrophe of Boeing, which was destroyed with direct participation of Russia, and that catastrophe changed the European approach to the situation due to a very simple reason: death of almost 300 people, 2/3 among which were the European citizens. This situation requires an answer. Who is to blame? and how to react on a situation like this. That is why I clearly understand that we expect some swift expert opinion of Dutch Commission. But let's not forget that this was an unprecedented crime, and in order to find some legal procedure to define it, some time is needed, and in the European Union and in the Netherlands, they believe that this must be a lengthy procedure. One more peculiar feature is that within the information front, there are the hottest fights of the information war, of the hybrid war. And one of the peculiarities I've mentioned in my scientific observations, because I'm still a scientist, I would like to tell you about this. The Russian Federation, and namely speaking its satellites, are using, as regards of Ukraine, one and the same scheme. It was revealed during Ilovaisk events in August the previous year, in February this year in Debaltsevo, and even this year, just recently, during the Marinka events. The scheme is as follows. At first, there is a real defeat of Ukrainian forces. So the informational sphere, so the mass media shows that there was a defeat. The next step is filling of the information space with some evidence. Those killed, trophies, destructions. Let's not forget that Russian fighters, that separatists are fighting not just with the help of weapons. They are fighting using video cameras and voice recorders. They operatively create different reports. Let's not think that we are fighting with fools. If we were fighting with fools, then we would have the parade of Ukrainian forces on the Red Square. The next stage is provocation of panicking mood within the Ukrainian society. The classical example is when we mean the best but have the worst. Different commands of servicemen on this or that situation, and this is manipulated. Now we live within conditions when the society is very vulnerable to defeats, and let's not forget that Ukraine did not get used to the situation like this. For 20 years we were proud that we have civic peace within our countries, and those losses which Ukraine had starting from 2014 are non-precedented. But this being the case, let's not forget that Ukraine had the most heavy losses among all the European countries during the World War I, World War II. But let's proceed speaking about this scheme. When the panic is there within the society, one more reactive agent is added. That is a simple recipe. What I mean, at Maidan we have a meeting, we create general staff, we block general staff and require this or that person to be appointed. It doesn't matter who the person is. So practically, during Ilovaisk trap, during the Debaltsevo events, these methods worked. We saw how the information wave was shaking. Around Marinka situation event, the approach was a bit different. The situation changed every hour. This is one of the peculiarities of the hybrid war. Agenda may be changed every hour, every day, and every week. There is no just black and white agenda. When separatists started attacking Marinka in in internet, we saw an opinion that we are being defeated when Ukrainian forces were attacking in response. A new opinion appeared. Ukraine violates the Minsk agreements. So we must highlight that our enemy is capable of swift reaction to changing situation, and we have to consider the resources they possess. They use those resources to the maximum extent. The Russian Federation is highly motivated in its combating against Ukraine. I believe that Russia more adequately assesses the situation within Ukraine than we do, than Ukraine does, or the European Union does, because the Russia understands that destruction of independent Ukraine will allow obtaining very powerful impulse for its own development. It will lose its own potential. So the Russia will demonstrate that it may impose its will. It will show the countries of the Central Europe what they may expect if they will not be friendly in its relations with the Russian Federation. One more thing I would like to emphasize, and which explains a lot. Ukraine does not have experience of responding to reaction, to aggression within the democratic society setting. When our country was divided between two empires during the World War I, during the World War II, part of Ukraine was a part of Hungary, so we do not have this experience to resist. We still have this perception of war. And the notion of war, the fear before war, is within the level of subconsciousness, and this is not surprising, this is not strange if we have a look at the events of the 20th century. I believe we may have a more sober look at the situation, and we'll understand that we need more serious, more fundamental changes in the civil approach to all the events we are witnessing so far. If to speak about information war, I believe that Ukraine is doomed to asymmetric actions. As of now, Ukraine does not possess thousands, hundreds, millions of dollars in order to properly react to the Russian aggression in the PPP format, public-private partnership format, because usually we hear these words that Ukraine must not be there within the political map of the Europe, and the term failed state is now used as regards of Ukraine. They've started using it after the Orange Revolution. Back then, the Russian Federation used the elements of hybrid war. Back then, we did not understand that, and now the speed of information spreading shows us that information is a powerful weapon, and it becomes a weapon which is more powerful than usual military weapon. If to speak about the essence of the hybrid war, its task is not to kill millions of people, but to frighten them. So the task of the Russian is not to get rid of blue and yellow Ukrainian flag. No. The task of Russia is to make us desperate, to make us believe that we have no future in our own country, that we are not capable of moving forward, and that Ukraine may not find the algorithm, the recipe in order to become a full-fledged country. For this purpose, the Russian Federation uses different approaches. For example, this fight for history. Just have a look who among the Ukrainian historical figures was not, so to say, privatized by the Russian Federation. So, for example, the monument for Volodymyr, who baptized Ukraine, is planned to be opened in the Russian Federation. So they are rewriting our history, and the Russian Federation is succeeding in that. And there are some figures which may not be, so to say, stolen by the Russian Federation. They discredit them, they criticize them strongly. Recently I was in Poland and I understood the roots of the Volyn cutting. That very event was very bloody. That was the UPA, or Ukrainian Insurgent Army fight, with a lot of people dead. But when the Russian Federation starts speaking about this event in Poland, it has a powerful effect, because the Ukrainian Insurgent Army being mentioned in the Poland, so to say, has this very negative response. I was not understood in this, but on the Ukrainian side, the analogy is obvious.
So one more means from it. So this is the energy front line. Specifically, when Russia started to call Ukraine a failed state as an unreliable partner, we had the gas war 2006-2008. Two myths which are imposed on the European society and Ukrainian society. Ukraine steals gas. Ukraine cannot supply gas to Europe in the proper and, let's say, provided for amounts. But if Ukraine steals gas, there is a part of truth in that, because in 1990s, a lot of, wealth was accumulated due to the steals of gas, but all of that was done with a silent agreement or consent on the part of the Gazprom. But actually, there is no solid evidence which could be proven of word of the court that Ukraine stole at least 1 cubic meter of gas from Russia. And again, Ukraine, the secondary share ramified system, energy system after Russia, but we didn't have any kind of disasters which would specify, or let's say testify to its incapability to manage this system. You remember when we we decided after the frozen of Alchevsk, we decided to take from the underground storages a certain amount of gas for the eastern parts of Ukraine. Can Ukraine get a victory or win a victory in the hybrid war? I believe this is a specific issue which is of concern of all of us. I believe that the chances to victory are there. The very fact that Ukraine did not disintegrate after the double strike, when on the one hand they amputated Crimea from Ukraine, on the other hand there was a real painful burn in Donbass, I believe still Ukraine can continue to struggle. I believe that the middle class saved Ukraine. Those people, despite the losses in their welfare and the loss in their business, they turned out to be not indifferent people. Russia was preparing for this war for a long time. On the soil of Ukraine. I mean, this is an obvious fact to myself, because the analysis of the whole all the events in the Crimea, let's say the diplomatic supervision or some kind of public initiatives, all of that prove and testify that everything was prepared on a very high level. And this preparatory stage lasted not days or weeks, but years. And Ukraine, under this situation, has to change. Ukraine has to realistically implement reforms, must not only build up the armed forces and the special services, which looks today like a really topical, urgent need, but also we had to look for some asymmetrical steps, the steps to be taken so that the Ukrainians could find for themselves a new idea. And today, I believe Ukraine mostly needs the idea how our country can unite both Russian-speaking and Ukrainian-speaking Ukrainians, all of them under one umbrella, one idea. The realization that the powerful, strong Ukraine is much more beneficial to all of us than the prospects to leave the boundaries of our country and just to leave the country and go somewhere else. Yes, Ukraine did face quite a few problems in its novel history, and very often Ukraine is mentioned as the state which never loses the chance to lose the chance, but everything changes in our life, and I believe that despite the tragic events of 2014 and first half of 2015, Ukraine managed to prove to the world that it can and is capable of introducing changes. If so, it can also win victory. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm prepared to take your questions. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions or maybe some specifications or comments? And Statsuk, Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, you're talking about the role of Ukraine in this hybrid war. And it's clear that it's not only fault of the Russian Federation, because our country also played this role, I will put it this way. So what kind of advice you can give us how Ukraine should act now? You mentioned that we need some kind of asymmetrical steps to be taken, reforms, unification of Ukrainians. What other steps can you name here how Ukraine should act today? And the second question, speaking about the hybrid war or information war to that matter, and propaganda on the part of the Russian Federation, what Ukraine can do, counter propaganda or do nothing, whatever. Very good questions. I'll try to tonight the answer to both questions into one answer. I mean, without the efficient information policy, we cannot even speak about the specific response to Russia and their efforts of encouragement in Ukraine. And I believe that the task of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center is one of the component of this asymmetrical response. If we would like to persuade the rest of the world, I believe we have to do that by the mouths or through the mouths of the speakers and the thinkers over there, because the ideas of the Western ideas are perceived not skeptical, but like something amazing, or well, it brings about the interest, but never very rarely hits the first pages of the newspapers. For Ukraine to take the place on the first pages, then the story about Ukraine must be written by their overseas, let's say, or in foreign golden pens, so to say, because that was always this. Actually, we are talking about the Russian strategy. They did everything in order for Yanukovych to voice the thesis which were previously voiced by Putin and Lavrov, but actually what happened, the BBC actually brought it to the way of the information interest. And on Tuesday, everybody was talking about, I'm talking about the latest interview taken by the BBC correspondent. And next day, everybody was talking about Yanukovych and the ostriches, Here, we did not talk about that too much, because for us, Yanukovych is something, obsolete or something like that. What has to be done? In addition to what I mentioned before, in addition to the realistic reform, I believe we have two more things. Kind of self-sacrifice the political elite, be close to the self-sacrifice of the ordinary people. so that the people can say that the ministers, the people's deputies, the president, they can, let's say, decline something, or let's say, sacrifice some of their interests, personal interests. Not necessarily they have to do that in the in the presence of journalists or the cameraman, but we have to do something for the sake of the Ukrainian servicemen, because over the last year, the Ukrainian army became really people's army. We can name them Zoro. We have all the grounds to say that. All the governmental bodies which are responsible for the confrontation with Russia, which participate in this procedure, they have to say, to talk in such a way that all those, let's say, all those news or messages be within one channel. Both Minister of Defense, the National Security and Defense Council, the government, whatever, they have to say in such a way, they have to talk in such a way that everything was kind of harmonious, and there was no kind of a lot of discrepancies between different sayings, to avoid fluctuations, or let's say when some people say something and the other group of people say something else. No, I'm not trying to persuade you that we have to have censorship. I'm talking about the possibility to talk in along the same line. Okay, the question is where we can purchase this book and how much does it cost? Well, I know that this book can find on shelves of the bookstores. There is also the internet shop of the Vivat publishing house, which sells the books all over Ukraine. This book was presented 2 months ago, over that period of time. Quite a few copies were sold. Well, again, I repeat myself, you can buy it in bookstores or the internet shop. If you just type Google hybrid war, you can find it. Thank you very much for your